And hello, YouTube. This is Thomas Judge back once again. And today I'm just going to provide one of my random thoughts. This is kind of an unscripted just set of thoughts about something that's been kicking around for a little while and actually got prompted by a recent Superman comic that I read. And what I want to talk about is the problem with Harley Quinn. Or I guess more accurately, I suppose my proposition here is that Harley Quinn is a bad thing for comics and for comics fandom. That's my opinion. That's my proposition. That's the contention that I'm just going to lay out here. Obviously, feel free to disagree with me. That's absolutely fine. But what I want to do is just put out what I think and why I think it. But before we jump into that, let's talk about Harley Quinn. Who is Harley Quinn? So Harley Quinn was a character created by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. She was originally in the Batman animated series, and was kind of like a comic relief henchwoman sidekick for the Joker. She turned up in one particular episode, but was popular enough that she kind of became a recurring character within the cartoon series. But she basically was just confined to the cartoon series. She only actually entered comic books themselves in Batman comics in, I think, 1999. And then they kind of fleshed out the backstory a bit, and she stopped just being like a quirky female henchwoman to just being like an origin story where she was a former psychologist in Arkham Asylum, full name Harleen Quinzel, which I know is hilarious. It's a bit like, what are the odds? Otto Octavius ends up with 8 limbs. Do you know what I mean? But Harleen Quinzel falls in love with the Joker, eventually breaks him out of prison, becomes his lover, becomes his accomplice. Um, and that's basically the backstory for the character. So she was introduced to DC Comics in '99. Later stories actually have her leaving her relationship with the Joker, which is something I'll talk about later, if at all, and eventually hooking it with Poison Ivy, which is a really sort of cute kind of fan relationship that I really like that they've kind of gone with. And to be honest, she was just in stuff intermittently until I'd probably say until the 2009 series Gotham City Sirens. Um, in that, she was pretty cool. And then in 2011, we had the New 52 reboot. Obviously, I'm a massive expert in the New 52 because of my 31 video guide in it and so on. And that's really where we get into kind of the what I call the Connor and Palmiotti era of Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti writing the character. And this is where we start to have a lot of problems with Harley Quinn, in my perception. And also, we also have her meteoric rise into popularity because she is one of the most popular characters. In fact, I think it's fair to say she's one of the most popular DC characters. I think it was Jim Lee that actually said she's pretty much the fourth pillar or the fourth foundation of DC Comics after the Trinity. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about Harley Quinn in the comics. Let's talk about the DC Trinity. So the DC Trinity is Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Three really important archetypal heroes. All three of them are sort of three different heroic ideals in very different ways. Even if you just look at Superman and you look at Batman, with Superman you've got the light, you've got the hope. In Batman you've got sort of the darkness and the fear. It's a really interesting kind of friendship with that duality in terms of what they do. And Wonder Woman brings a really interesting third dynamic of being the peacemaker with the sword. It's a really interesting kind of perspective. And the DC Trinity as a whole is it's great, as is the Justice League, I guess. The important thing to keep in mind is that all these heroes, like all superheroes should be, really embody responsibility and embody accountability and embody something to aspire towards. And I guess there's a lot to unpick there. I guess what I'm saying is that Superman hugely feels a sense of responsibility for the power that he has. He always gives up his own time. He's always putting himself at risk to help and save anyone. He refuses to kill. Similarly with Batman, refuses to kill, refuses to use guns, and he feels responsible and accountable for the crime in Gotham. And he's clearly on this kind of quest to avenge his parents' death in one broad way or another. And basically, that's what a superhero is. A superhero is someone with moral integrity and moral fiber. I mean, you can leap over the divide and look at Marvel or look at Spider-Man. And the classic line, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's the important thing. Superheroes have always kind of embodied that. And yes, I'm aware, when we're talking comics, we're talking about so many other things. We can talk about fantasy, we can talk about romance comics, we can talk about westerns and military comics. But ultimately, what I'm talking about are cape comics, superhero comics. And within the confines of that, I think it's fair to say that superheroes are characters that have responsibility, that can be aspired to in one way or another, and that are accountable for certain things. They have certain boundaries and certain ground rules. At least the heroes do. Obviously, I mean, the Joker doesn't, but villains are a separate thing. And one of the things that got me thinking about this and thinking about this video today is I was reading an issue of Superman. In fact, it's Superman issue 225 because I'm working through a huge reading order of about 1,000 Superman issues. And there's a point in that where there's some average people who are talking to Superman. They say that, one of the things they use to guide their behavior and influence their actions is they ask themselves, what would Superman do? And it's obviously a play on the term, what would Jesus do or whatever that, lots of people use. But it's a really fair point. Like, what would Superman do? Doesn't matter who you're a fan of. You can say, what would Tom Cruise do? What would Bruce Wayne do? It doesn't really matter. The point is that when you look at a hero, you look at someone in a cape, or you look at someone who you look up to, it's someone you aspire to in one way or another, be it aspiring to their physical prowess, be it aspiring to their sort of their intelligence and their responsibility or their integrity. And that's really what superheroes are for. Ultimately, the reason I read superhero comics, one of the reasons I read them, is to really look at these kind of extreme personalities that one can look up to. Harley Quinn isn't any of that. She's the opposite of all that. She epitomizes a lack of personal responsibility and a lack of accountability. People like to act like she's an anti-hero. She's not an anti-hero. There are stories, relatively recent stories in the DC universe where she's plotted to blow up children on Christmas Eve. I'm not the only person who points this out, but the thing is, she's not a good person. She's not really a bad person. She's just chaos. And in that sense, she just lowers the bar for aspiration. Like when I read Harley Quinn, I don't think to myself, "Oh, this is something where you're looking at someone with lots of powers and they're being responsible about them, or someone who's, taking ownership of their actions." Harley Quinn doesn't do that at all. In all her comics, she basically is a force of chaos that does random crap, hurts random people, takes no responsibility for her actions, doesn't feel accountable to anything, causes damages, hurt feelings, does various things, but she's never actually malicious about it. She's just fucking dumb. She's just someone who has no interest in the consequences of her actions, understanding what they are, or changing her personal behavior. She's not an anti hero. She's a pain in the ass. And it doesn't matter what part of the Connor Palmiotti arc that you read, that is basically the case. Yeah, oh, she's quirky and she's funny and she's got this romantic interest in Poison Ivy. Yeah, that's fine. But ultimately, she's an asshole. You wouldn't want to be friends with her. You wouldn't look up to her. She's not responsible for anything. She doesn't accept consequences for her own actions in any way. She lowers the bar on the sort of person that you'd want to be around or spend time with. Like, she's just not cool. There are other characters that are like this. I mean, in the Marvel universe, I haven't read much of it, but Squirrel Girl gives me the same kind of feel. I'm not going to dive into that because I haven't read enough of that to really be certain. But it's this kind of thing where what we're doing is we're lowering the bar for what we aspire to. I mean, it's it's kind of got a twofold effect. One, it makes him much more accessible as a character, it makes him much more mainstream, it makes him much more popular. But the other side of that twofold effect is that it does it by lowering our own standards for people that we look up to. We look up to Wonder Woman, we look up to Superman, we even look up to Batman, even though he's a bit of a psychopath. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't be looking up to people like Harley Quinn. And people that do cosplay, people that adore the character and go to Comic Cons dressed up with them and so on, they shouldn't be going as Harley Quinn because Harley Quinn's a loser. Harley Quinn's someone that takes no responsibility for what they do, and we shouldn't look up to or in any way try to be like this person. Now, I'm conscious there's lots of different versions of Harley Quinn. I mean, even if we just look at the Suicide Squad movies, we've got the first version in the first Suicide Squad movie with obviously Margot Robbie in all three of these. Then we have a very different version in Birds of Prey. Now, there's a lot of interesting talk that can be had about these two different depictions of Harley Quinn, and a lot of it is to do around the male gaze and over an unnecessary sexualization of the Harley Quinn character. And I can completely see where they're coming from with that. But whether or not you're talking about the original Suicide Squad Harley Quinn, the Birds of Prey one, which was aesthetically at least much less attractive to me as a man, simply because it's not catered for me as a man. It's not about the male gaze, it's about feminist empowerment, and I get that. And then you have the 2021 Suicide Squad with a kind of a hybrid of the two, where you have to some extent a more attractive Harley Quinn, but still she's kind of an asshole. And to be fair, she's increasingly more of a irresponsible, accountability shirking sort of buffoon the further you go along that spectrum. In the original Suicide Squad movie, she doesn't really have much characterization, to be fair, so you don't really get a sense of quite how irresponsible she is. In Birds of Prey, you definitely get a feel for that, and it's really distasteful to watch. I've known people who are like that. I've known people who live these irresponsible, consequence-free lives where they just cause damage and destruction to people around them and don't seem to care or even feel that they're responsible, and they're not nice people to be around. It pulls it back a little bit in the 2021 movie, but ultimately, what we have to keep in mind is that for all these different variations, these aren't things we should look up to. We'll talk about aesthetics more in a second, I guess, but the point is that these behaviors and the way that she behaves in these movies, these aren't good depictions. The aesthetics of it are quite different, and frankly, and I say this, I hate to do this, but I say this as a man. I hate to use it as an excuse for how I think about things or how I say things, but I do think there's something to be said for trying to look aesthetically better, as in fitter, more healthy, etc., etc., like a gymnast, like a superhero, and so on. This isn't about sort of sexualization of the character, and I can completely understand why the Birds of Prey movie moved away from that sexualization of the character that the first Suicide Squad had. Obviously, I prefer the first; it's the male gaze thing. But at the same time, even if we look at male heroes like Superman or like Batman, like I look at someone like Henry Cavill playing Superman, and he has an aspirational physique. He has an aspirational approach towards his own body, his own aesthetics, and so on. He's a good-looking guy, and I think, oh, that's something I can look up to and something I can respect. Bruce Wayne, I mean, not in all the Batman movies, but definitely in the Snyderverse one. There's that whole montage of Ben Affleck working out, and yeah, it's a thing where it's like whether or not I work out like that. The point is, you look at that and you think, yeah, that's something I can aspire to. Someone with willpower trying to improve themselves physically, and it applies to Wonder Woman as well, and it applies to, I guess, early Harley Quinn. But when you get to later Harley Quinn, where all she seems to do is sit around all day long, just eating ice cream, playing with this stuffed beaver that is some kind of very poor, tasteless joke, and shooting random people with raccoons and throwing hyenas off roofs into cars and all sorts of things. It's like this doesn't give me any idea that this person behaves in an aspirational way. The number of times, the number of comics I've read with Batman in where he's training in one way or another, be it working out in the Batcave or training with Robin or Nightwing or something, and that all makes sense. It makes me think, yeah, maybe I should do that. If I don't go to the gym, maybe that's the sort of thing I should do. But there's something damaging about looking at a character and going, oh, all she does all day is sit around and eat ice cream all day and he's just kind of useless. And that's cool because she's funny and quirky. It lowers the bar of what we like. And whilst there are different versions of Harley Quinn that are cool, the Ivy relationship is very cool. The Joker relationship is kind of poorly done, but I guess that's a topic for another video. Ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is that telling people it's okay to be a terrible friend, have a terrible personality, to be unattractive, lacking in willpower, irresponsible, and not holding yourself accountable for your own actions, be it in terms of what you do to yourself as an individual or how you treat the people around you. Holding all those things up as things that it's okay to be, that's bad. Because essentially what it does is it empowers idiocy. It empowers crass behavior. It empowers kind of a childish lack of responsibility and a lack of willingness to grow up. Superman is a grown-up character. Wonder Woman, and especially some of the more powerful Wonder Woman issues. Read Wonder Woman Hikatea, for example. It is a powerful, empowered, mature storyline of someone really considering responsibility and considering their own actions and what their own sort of what their own values are. It's a really important, powerful story. A lot of Wonder Woman stories are like that. A lot of Superman stories are like that. A fair few Batman stories are like that. But Harley Quinn is just it's just idiocy. And in that sense, when I did my New 52 guide, I referred to them as goofy comics because I completely appreciate loads of people find them fun. That's cool. I've got loads of goofy comics in my comic collection that are fun and are light-hearted and are jokey and break the fourth wall. That's fine. But having Harley Quinn within the DC universe interacting with Batman and Superman, that doesn't work for me. It's really tonally jarring in the same way that it's tonally jarring if you watch Thor Love and Thunder. It was totally jarring to have gore in a movie which had so many comedic slapstick moments. It's the same sort of thing. Like Harley Quinn doesn't belong in the same sentence or the same closed universe as Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, and so on. And that's the problem with Harley Quinn. I understand she's really popular, but she's not popular because she's great. She's popular because she lowers the bar and she lowers the standard of what people are willing to aspire to and cosplay as, and so on. And this is the thing, like we shouldn't be lowering that standard. People should be looking up to people that are worth looking up to. We shouldn't be lowering the standard and lowering our aspirations and just saying, oh, hey, it's okay to treat people badly and not think about the consequences of your action and to be irresponsible. Hey, listen, I know it sounds like I'm just bagging on Harley Quinn, so I'm going to jump the divide and I'm going to have a look at Marvel for a second. Deadpool. I cannot stand Deadpool. I've watched the movies. I watched both of them. I thought they were reasonably fun. That's fine. I haven't actually read many Deadpool comics, so I am basing most of this on sort of the liminal Deadpool comics that I've read, often when he's featuring in other things. So, for example, I've read him in Tom Taylor's Wolverine. I read him in X-Force by Rick Remender, and a few other bits and pieces here and there. And obviously, I've seen the movies. And Deadpool's fun. I've got no problem with that. I like Ryan Reynolds. All good. But he's a hero for the jackass generation. He's a hero for people that watch Dirty Sanchez. I mean, he's not a superhero. And yeah, oh, you can say, oh, he's an anti-hero because he kills the bad guys, but only the bad guys. He doesn't do like Harley Quinn, where she has historically killed good people. Like he's never done that. He's an anti-hero. Yeah, he's an anti-hero. That's fine, but he's still an asshole. He's still irresponsible. He's still childish. Um, Nothing to aspire to there, and he often doesn't view himself as accountable to his own actions. In some cases in the movies, yes, he does. There are some sparks that go through that. Um, and I get that. So I don't think Deadpool is as problematic a character as Harley Quinn. But that said, what I see when I see people cosplay and what I see when I see younger people that are really into the video games and into the movies is they don't see the shreds of decency that run through the Deadpool character. They just see him as someone who goes around causing violence, saying slapsticky stuff, has no integrity, has no real moral or principles he holds himself to. It's another example of lowering the bar of what we expect from our capes, from our superheroes, if you want to use that term. And Deadpool's fine, but I don't like to see him in the same comics universe as much more weighty, much more serious characters like Captain America. I just don't really view that as a thing which is good. And this is a problem I have with the MCU, with Deadpool entering the MCU. I do not see that as going well for me. But listen, let's jump back over. Let's kind of summarize here. I don't want to go on for too long. This is sometimes bugging me for a while because I see Harley Quinn being extremely popular and like lots of people like her, lots of people cosplay as her. People love the comics, people have the posters and so on. And I know some people that are really into Harley Quinn, and that's fine, good for you. But the thing is, a lot of the modern depictions of Harley Quinn just depict a maverick, chaotic, irresponsible asshole, and that's not someone we should look up to. To quote Adam Ryan from BioShock, we all make choices, but in the end, it's our choices that make us. Finally, if we're going to look at some Harley Quinn stories that I would recommend, and there are some, the one that I will recommend, hand on my heart, without missing a beat, is Harleen by Stefan Chazek. I know this is going to sound weird based on everything else I've just said in this video, but I will say this. There's 3 issues of Harleen. This, if you can get it as a hardcover, please do, because it has this amazing acetate cover. Um, the Harleen series is one of the best comics I've read in the last 10 years. It is phenomenal. The characterization is incredible. The art is incredible. It is a story that any DC fan should read, and I would say almost any comic fan should read. It's incredible. And whilst it really does bring a lump to my throat, and I read it and I love it, and I'm so glad it's in my collection, I wish we had an absolute edition, and it kills me that Stefan Chazik's not doing a Ivy series and a Catwoman series as he'd kind of initially started to sketch out. What I will say is this. It also kills me to read this story and realize how good Harley Quinn can be and how badly she's been handled by DC. And as a result, how kind of shallow and meretricious the fandom that has arisen around Harley Quinn has become. It could have been so much better than this. She genuinely could have been viewed as a character as nuanced, as rich, as full of depth as any of the Trinity, as Wonder Woman, Superman, or Batman. And when you read Harley by Stefan Shazek, you will get that feeling. Unfortunately, she is a shallow, cliched, characterless stereotype of just jokes and memes and sort of very poorly thought out banter. It's a real shame. And every time I go to a convention and I see people dressing up as Harley Quinn and I see people raving about how much they like her and having all the gimmicks and all the gadgets, and it's like this shouldn't be this way. We need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We should be able to ask the question, what would Superman do? We should be able to ask the question, what would Batman do? We should be able to ask the question, what would Wonder Woman do? And if we're going to look at the Harley Quinn in the same breath, we should be able to ask that question, like we can when we read the character in the series Harleen. What would Harleen Quinzel do? What would Harley Quinn do? And we should be able to look at that and go, this is a superhero, this is a character in a superhero universe, at least, anti-hero or not, that we can take seriously, that we can respect, and that we can enjoy. And the problem with Harley Quinn is that the Harley Quinn that's currently depicted is bad for the comics industry as a whole, is bad for comics continuity as a whole, and is bad for comics fandom. That's my opinion. Let me know your thoughts down below. That's Thomas Judge with a random thought, signing out. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.